Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Jenenne Geske, and I'm a faculty member in the Department of Family Medicine at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I'm here today to talk to you about reading research literature for evidence. You may be wondering why it's important to know this. There are several reasons. One is communication. Journal articles are one of the primary means that scientists have with communicating with each other. Another reason this is important is that it's a reliable source of information. Journal articles, before they are published, in most cases undergo a peer review before a decision on publication is made. This means a panel of experts look at the paper and make a determination as to whether or not it's important for publication, ready for publication, and contributes to the literature. The peer review panel can make a recommendation to not publish the paper. They can make a recommendation to publish the paper outright, or they can make suggestions to the authors to make a few changes in the paper and then reconsider it. Research journal articles also are one of the more current ways of collecting information. It's more current source of evidence. This is a big reason why teachers tend to tell you to look for primary sources and to go to journal articles to support any theories or papers that you have. It's because they are reliable and they are current. By the end of our talk today, you should be able to understand the format of most journal articles. You should be able to identify your goals in reading an article. You should strategically and quickly identify the important pieces of an article. And you should know how to apply this knowledge to select relevant articles. People wonder what the best strategy is for reviewing research articles. There are varying approaches. There are probably as many different approaches as there are researchers. There are a lot of people who suggest different ways of doing it. Ultimately, it comes down to why are you looking at this article? What are your goals? What do you want to obtain out of this? Each section of the article has different goals and has different information that is presented in it. And you may be able to just focus on a few sections to support your goals for looking at the article. You then therefore need to identify why you're reading the article, what you need to come out of it, what you want to come out of it. In general, it's probably not a good strategy to read the entire article. Ultimately, it's about time management. You want to determine which papers best suit your needs and gather the pertinent information from those papers. Now, journal articles in general follow a similar format. For most experimental or quantitative articles, they all kind of follow the same format. Qualitative articles are a whole other beast, and they don't really fall into this category. The first thing all articles have is a title, and this is your first way of identifying information and understanding what the topic of the article is. Your next piece of the article is the abstract, which summarizes the entire article for you. It gives you information on how the study was conducted, and it tells you what the primary findings are. The introduction and background of an article introduces the topic to you. It tells you what we already know, and it tells you where gaps are and how the authors are addressing them. The method section of the article tells you how the study was done. It tells you who was studied, what are their characteristics. It tells you the procedures that were done. It tells you what variables were measured. It tells you how they were measured. In a method section, there should be enough information that allows any reader or researcher to replicate the study. The results are kind of self-intuitive. They tell you what the research found. Results sections tend to be kind of technical. There's usually a lot of statistical information in them, and you may have difficulty reading them. I would just recommend going through as best you can. There are usually summary statements among the statistics. There are also usually tables and figures in the results section that will help you understand what information is being presented. And finally, there's the discussion and conclusion section. Some journals have this as a single section. Some journals divide this up into two separate sections. In this section, you'll find the author's interpretations of their findings. It generally is a summary statement. They place their research findings within the body of literature. They tell you why the findings are important, and they tell you the strengths and the limitations of the study and maybe suggestions for future research. The discussion section often ends with a final take-home point that the authors want you to take away with you. Like I said, ultimately, you want to know what the goals are for reading the article. You want to focus on the different sections of the article depending on what your goals are. And there may be many different goals. You might be reading this article to do a critique or review. It might be a class assignment in which you're going to have a class discussion about the article. You might be writing a term paper and are reviewing several articles to find information to put in your term paper. Maybe you're just curious. Maybe you just are curious about the topic and you want to know what information is out there about it. You might go to a journal article to find processes, find out how they did their study and use it to help you determine how you should conduct a study. Similarly, you might be able to use it to find the findings. And finally, you might need to be an expert in a field, or you might already be an expert in the field. Generally, if you're working on a master's thesis or a dissertation, expertise in the field of your study is expected, and that usually recalls a thorough understanding of most relevant articles in that particular topic. There may be different kinds of information that you're looking for when you're reading an article. You might be looking for the big picture. Maybe you just want the main points. Maybe you want the nitty-gritty, the details of a paper. You might just be looking for new claims. You might be looking for graphs and tables. You might be looking for implications of a study. There are different reasons. And for that reason, you can go to specific sections of an article to kind of help you find the information that you want, the information that supports the reasons you're reading this article. And this is a chart that kind of gives you some information about that. Now I'm going to take a brief break here and talk a little bit about predatory journals. As you are looking for articles for whatever reason, be cautious that you don't have a predatory journal that is publishing the paper you're interested in. Predatory journals tend to take advantage of authors. They aren't really very legitimate. They're usually open access journals, which means anybody can read the articles. You don't have to pay to access the information. And all open access articles are not predatory. There are a lot of journals that offer open access to their journal articles that are not predatory journals, that are completely legitimate journals. One of the primary characteristics of predatory journals is that it's a pay-to-publish model. The authors have to pay the editors of the journal, the owners of the journal, whatever, to publish their paper. And it may be $500, it may be $5,000, depending on the journal. But what this does is leaves the author's information out there. They get this paper published in this predatory journal. The paper has not been peer reviewed. It may not be good science. It may be something that, if it were peer reviewed, improvements could be made to the paper. And it's often not indexed in PubMed or other databases like that. You might find them in Google Scholar, but not usually in the library databases. Often a predatory journal has titles that are close to the title of legitimate journals, so it can be very confusing for authors. They may fraudulently represent their editorial staff. There are a lot of predatory journals that say this is our editorial board and these are all the people that are on it, and they're people that don't exist, or they're people who don't know their names are being included as a board member of this journal. Like I said, they publish papers with no peer review. They may publish papers without any review at all. If you do a search for predatory publishing or predatory articles and the word stings, you'll find that there are several instances where authors have sent junk articles to journals, and these predatory journals have published them with obvious misinformation, obvious phony information. If you're unsure about the legitimacy of the journal, there are a couple of things you can do. You can go to bealslist.net and look to see if the journal is on this list. This is kind of a blacklist list of journals that are predatory. Dr. Beal, who started the list, received a lot of pushback from the predatory publishers and from his administrators at his institution, because there is really no proof or evidence that says this journal is predatory and this journal is not. And so he stopped publishing his list, and now it's managed by an anonymous graduate student who tries to keep it updated. It's probably the most comprehensive list. Another way you can identify predatory journals is, this is often my first step, is just put in the journal name of the journal you're looking at and the word predatory. And you'll kind of get a sense. There'll either be a lot of hits on sites that indicate what predatory journals are, or at the very least, you're not going to find a whole lot of hits in legitimate sources, in a journal name or a publisher or things like that. It's usually fairly obvious. Here are some resources that you can go to learn more about predatory journals if you're interested. Now we're going to move to an activity that's going to give you a little bit of practice on reviewing journal articles and how to find the important information that might be relevant to you. You should have, to start the activity, the included article, Trends in E-cigarette, cigarette, cigar, and smokeless tobacco use among U.S. adolescent cohorts, and there is an activity guide that corresponds to that. I'd like you to stop here and complete the activity, and when you're done with the activity, we'll come back. You can go to the Reading Research Literature for Evidence Part 2 video, and we'll go over your activity. Okay, thank you. See you soon.